back
What are we
to
calling
Israel.
it?
And if that means shove your
Ah,
fists up
bilo-bilo
their
pala
ass,
ginataang
or
bilo.
trying to recruit you, or
So,
tell you to go fuck
these are the
yourself while they try to
ingredients. This is
recruit,
the
the guy
glutinous
sitting
rice
next to
flour.
you, or the guy
Glutinous
in the
rice
defense
flour, right?
contractor's office.
Yeah.
They don't
Glutinous
care
flour.
what you think of them.
So we make it round. That's why
Because
we
for
call
them,
it
it's an issue
bilo-bilo.
of survival.
From the
They
word
don't
below,
know
round.
if they don't survive.
Yeah,
The thing
below,
is,
below or
they
round.
have a real
This
problem
is the
balancing
saba or the
intelligence collection with
Right.
political influence.
Pwede ko diba ganito?
plantain.
You know,
Huh?
over the last couple of weeks, for example,
Punasan, ano mo muna?
a myriad
And
of
then we
Western countries
have
have begun
different
recognizing
colors of
Palestine,
sweet
the
potatoes.
black,
We have yellow.
the British, the French, the Irish,
We have
the
yellow,
Spanish, the
purple, and
Canadians,
white.
the Australians.
Orange.
Next week,
Ay,
It's
orange,
gonna be
sorry.
New
It's
Zealand.
orange. And then we have
if you look at
purple.
that now,
Actually,
the United
purple
States is the only Western
sweet
country
potato
that
will
doesn't
make
recognize
the
Palestine.
whole thing purple as well.
That says a lot.
That's why we're excited
but
to have it
we've
purple.
Allowed the
Sweet
Israelis to put us in a corner
So, okay, let's do this.
where we're either with them or we're against them, and there's nothing in
Let's do
between.
this.
And that's just simply not true.
Hugas ako ng kamay ah. Of course, we have to wash.
We should have as our goals U.S. national interests.
Yep.
Period. I don't give a shit what
Round,
Israel's
round,
national
round.
goals are. My job as a CIA officer
siya.
was to protect.
Ikan mo lang para malaki. Just small. Kaya Jerry, good morning. Kamusta? Gandang umaga kaya Jerry.
Protect the United States
Yeah, Jerry's from
and
Texas.
American interests and American citizens. If the Israelis need to protect their people, God bless. That's all
Nakasarap sa'yo
Israelis.
yan. Okay, daw.
But
Hello
never ever
guys.
should we place ourselves second to any other country, ever, under any circumstances. You know,
Have you
there's a
tried
famous saying
bilo-bilo
that
kay Jerry?
there's no such thing as permanent friendships, only permanent interests. And we live that with every country in the world except Israel. We always put Israel's interests first. You know, what, how is it in our interest to allow a genocide in Gaza, for example? It's not.
Siyempre,
If we're this shining
Weather.
beacon of hope
Wow,
for human
5:30
rights
a.m.
and civil rights
It's
and civil
Monday
liberties,
there,
then let's
Jerry.
be the shining beacon.
Oh, I
Let's
don't
not
know why
pretend that there's not a genocide
the
taking place in
night
in
mode is
Gaza.
not
There is.
working.
And this isn't John's definition of genocide. This is the United Nations. So I appreciate that the Israelis have a job to do, and they believe that it's a nearly
Night
impossible
mode
job.
is not working today.
But that's not my problem. And it shouldn't be the problem of the
Here
CIA
is
or
6:30
the United States
kay
government writ large.
So let's go there then.
Dinner bilo-bilo.
Why do you think that
We had our lunch from
Netanyahu's asked every president to bomb Iran,
Yeah.
and none of them have done it besides Trump? Why do you think that is?
The Israelis always want us to do their dirty work for them, calculating that if we do it,
bilo-bilo dinner.
there probably will not be retaliation. And if there is retaliation, of course, it'll be against us. And we're more equipped to absorb
Bilo-bilo is also
Iranian
healthy.
retaliation than the Israelis are. But
Oh,
president
regional.
after president after
Except
president
for-
has said, no, we're not going to bomb Iran for you.
It's really bad.
Until Donald Trump said, yes, we will bomb. So again, here's a president who wants desperately to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And my God,
Monday
he's doing
morning
really well.
dito today, Labor
Right?
Day. Oh, do you have
Peace
work today?
between friggin'
It's Labor Day.
Cambodia and
Yes.
Thailand, between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of
Kaya
Congo,
Jerry,
between
starts of
Pakistan
Christmas
and
here.
India.
You know, we have
It's-
now.
I'm flabbergasted
We
at
have
the
now
success
Christmas
that Donald
tree.
Trump has had in these hotspots
Yeah.
around the world. But on Gaza, which is arguably the most horrific thing happening in the world right now,
Hello, 11 million.
he just concedes to the Israelis.
16 million, hello.
So,
Enjoy your holiday,
if you're
guys.
Donald Trump and you strong arm the Iranians into going back to the negotiating table on the nuclear program after they swore they would never do it. They did it because you demanded it.
Enjoy your holiday.
But then you bomb them with the biggest bomb that humankind has ever seen. Well, then what's the incentive for them to do what you want a second time?
To do what you want.
Why would they trust you?
Oh
And
my.
they shouldn't. I wouldn't trust
Most
you.
is awake.
And that Nobel Peace Prize, forget it. Because we're gonna head into a longer term war now. Trina Parsi published a piece. We're in early August. He just published a piece on the 10th of August, predicting that there would be an Israeli-Iranian war by the end of August. Trina Parsi is one of the greatest Iran scholars on the planet. And he lays this out. It's in Foreign Affairs magazine. He lays it out in very logical fashion. And so,
Let her go.
if the United States can't be an honest broker,
Yes,
it can't
Vermont's
keep
na
the two
kuya.
sides apart
That's why.
while
We're
the
starting
diplomats
our
do the job
Christmas
that they're
now.
trained to do,
Vermont.
then why would they
Vermont
listen
is
to us
Christmas season in the
on any
Philippines.
issue? It doesn't make sense.
So that's something that I think about. I agree with you. I don't want America to be the world police.
No.
I don't.
Nor do
I don't really care if there's something perceived to be wrong with saying I care about America over any other country's interests. Where I do wonder and have, I guess, wishful thinking is it's easy for people to, people that don't have access to classified information to sit there and Monday morning quarterback it and say, oh my God, you guys armed the Mujahideen when the Soviets were in Afghanistan, look what you did. But there's obviously more moving pieces and backdoors, and there's intelligence that the average American who reads a newspaper isn't privy to. So I would like to think that, for example, Donald Trump being a certain way to the Israelis is for a reason. But what reason?
The reason is AIPAC has him by the balls. I hate to say it, Trump. Yeah. And not just Trump, but pretty much every member of Congress. AIPAC is the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It's the Israel lobby.
Big boy,
Now, they
hello.
somehow
How are you
have convinced
doing?
the government that they
Looks
are
like me,
just a group of
flower
Americans who
balls.
really
Your
loves
kapatid
Israel.
is preparing
Which of
Lala.
course
They
is
preparing for
complete,
tortillas.
total horseshit.
Really, this is the bilo-bilo.
It's,
This is the main
It
ingredient
should
of
be registered as a
bilo-bilo.
foreign lobbying group.
Bilo-bilo
and it's
means it's like below.
not. But if you
Bilo-bilo.
are an
Bilog
elected
or
official
round.
in the United States and you are not 100%
Bilo-bilo is from the word bilog,
they will
or
primary you.
in English,
And
round.
they have great success in defeating incumbents who express even the vaguest support for Palestinian human
Awesome,
rights.
this one.
I'll tell you another thing the Israelis are successful at is cultivating Jewish leaders here in the United States. Josh Shapiro, for example. I'm from Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro is the governor of Pennsylvania. He happens to be Jewish. Cool, no problem with that. But he also happens to be a veteran of the IDF, the Israel Defense Force. He went and did his time on an Israeli kibbutz when he was 18 years old. And he loved Israel so much that he joined the Israeli military. Okay, now you're the governor of Pennsylvania, and you're one of the front runners for the Democratic nomination for president. But where do your loyalties lie? You have served the Israeli government. I can't trust you to keep the United States first in your mind. You haven't served the American government, but you served the Israeli government. That bothers me immensely. There were a couple of Congress people who were members of the so-called squad who gave speeches on the floor of the House that, this wholesale massacre of Palestinian civilians and women and children is just wrong. They were immediately primaried. Cori Bush, for example, in St. Louis, they threw her out on her ass. Jamal Bowman in New York, out. Why? Because they said, maybe the Israelis shouldn't be massacring all these women and children. Oh, how dare you? You must be anti-Semitic. And they throw them out. This is a very dangerous development for a foreign organization or an organization that supports a foreign government to have this kind of stranglehold on our government. So somebody's got to say something. Somebody's got to stand up to these people. And I think we're getting there. You know, the rest of the world sees it, and they're all recognizing Palestine. They've only to put diplomatic pressure on the Israelis, and we're just not there yet. And we're standing alone. You know, we used to have this joke at the agency. Every time there was a vote in the United Nations General Assembly, the vote was like 194
Everybody, how are you
for,
doing today?
right? And the four was always the U.S., Israel, Costa Rica, and Tuvalu.
Habal-habal. Don't remember Bilo-Bilo. Oh,
Was on the other
Bilo-Bilo
side.
is a food.
Why? Why do we isolate ourselves like that?
Habal-habal
Why do
is
we have to
the
protect Israelis
motorbike.
and pretend that they're not
Like,
committing war
yeah,
crimes?
sari-sari is the store, sari-sari.
What's in it
Okay,
for us?
is the
Remember, there are no
okay, thrift
permanent
store.
relations, just permanent interests, and it's not in our interest to
Hello
isolate
everybody.
ourselves.
Yeah, man, I haven't touched what's going on in Gaza on this show yet. Just because I don't know if I'm educated enough to give an opinion on it on camera. But what I will say I'm educated enough to say is it's fucking horrific. Gaza is leveled. There's thousands of innocent people dying and starving.
How many bodies are in the world? So the official death toll is approaching 70,000, but people are afraid that there are as many as 200,000 bodies still in the rubble that haven't been accounted for. And let me tell you another thing. Again, going back to Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan is an avowed Zionist, right? That's cool. That's your position. God bless.
Okay, boil the first
But he asked a couple of weeks ago,
water and
the panel, Jack
coconut
Zodiac and two
milk.
progressive podcasters.
Boil the water and
And he asked what our positions were on Gaza. And I was the last one to speak, but all three other guys said Israelis have gone too far. And Pierce says, John, what about you? You haven't really said anything about Gaza. Do you believe Hamas is a terrorist group, and do you believe Israel has the right to exist? I said, of course I believe Israel has the right to exist, and yes, indeed, Hamas is a terrorist group, but that doesn't mean that the Israeli government can massacre, wholesale, women, children, the elderly. There used to be 7 functioning hospitals in Gaza, now there are none. Before the war started, Gaza had 5 hours of electricity and 2 hours of clean water every day. Now there's nothing. People are starving to death in Gaza with more frequency than they're starving to death in Ethiopia. And we're allowing this to happen. Enough is enough, I say. Sure, Israel has a right to exist, but the Israelis have to stop murdering people. And then he said, this is the first time we've ever talked about Israel on this show. We're all for Palestine. So they've lost us. Israel. They've lost part of the people. They've got to stop.
And I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. So I had a guy in here who was a Delta Force operator, and he was an officer. So he was a tactician, not necessarily a bullet picker the entire time he planned operations. And what he talked about in here was they have a matrix or a calculus, so to speak, about the acceptable number of civilian casualties when they drop the gun or hit it with a drone. And I guess, again, that what prompted me to think about that is seeing entire buildings drop in Gaza to hit one person.
That's the Israeli policy. And they did it in Iran too, during the 12-day war. They will take out the entire city block if there's one target in one of those apartment buildings that they want to get.
So what about the CIA? Do they have, like when they plan a drone strike, is there an acceptable
boil the
number?
coconut milk
Does it
first.
depend on who the target
Kuya
is?
Jerry
It does
Paalam,
depend
thank
on
you
who
so
the target
much.
is. But
Hello
but
CH,
the
how are
standing
you?
orders are
Lucy, hello,
the
hello.
fewest civilian casualties as humanly possible.
That can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah, in some cases, you take out an entire family of a dozen people if you think your target is there and this is your only opportunity to get them. But for there to be a half a dozen people killed in a drone attack, that's unusual.
A half a dozen is unusual.
Yeah. You know, what the agency normally likes to do, if it has the opportunity, is a close-in hit. They'll parachute guys in, and they do the hit, and then exfil as quickly as possible. The Israelis, they don't give a shit. They'll literally take out the entire block. You know, the Israelis, this was covered in the Washington Post, just a couple days after the 12-day war started. And what the Israelis did is that they have a lot of Farsi-speaking Jews in Israel. These are Iranians who are Jewish and who emigrated to Israel. And a lot of them work for Mossad in Shin Bet. And what the Israelis did was they got the cell phone numbers of literally every Iranian nuclear scientist. And they had these these Iranian Jews call on their cell phones, call the scientists and say, listen, you're going to die. Right? We're going to kill you tomorrow. You have no hope. You're going to die. Just accept it. Or you can defect to us right now. And they're like, fuck you. And they hang up the phone. Then they call the wives and say, listen, we're going to kill your husband tomorrow. So tell him this is his only chance. He's going to die tomorrow. And what they ended up doing is just taking out the entire block of apartment buildings. They killed 14 nuclear scientists. That devastates the entire program. And family members as well. They wiped out entire families. And now they're gathering intelligence on the next generation of Israeli scientists, and they're going to start killing them. The U.S. would never have this. We'll try to do, some pinprick thing, or do it in person, but never just, kill. They killed 300 people in southern Lebanon when they went after Hassan Nasrallah, the former head of Hezbollah. They just blew up the entire complex. It decapitated Hezbollah. It was also a war crime.
I mean, to be fair, the Mossad does do the close-in stuff too.
Yeah, they do.
Like the Mashal one in Jordan.
Yeah.
And what about that one in Dubai? Do you remember that?
Classic. We studied that for a long time. They killed a guy in a hotel room in Dubai. And then after they killed him, they were somehow able to lock the door from the inside of the hotel room. And we tried magnets and different ways. We couldn't figure out how to do it.
Like a latched door?
They did the latch and this one. And the guy's in there dead. And the hotel couldn't even get it open. Yeah, they ended up sending somebody in from the continent. And how do they do that? It's very impressive.
Wasn't there also some... Okay, first of all, the Israelis never officially claimed responsibility for that. But there was like 26 people that the Dubai CCTV footage picked up.
Right.
And
in Dubai, they have
yeah.
the most CCTV coverage in the world. More than the Chinese.
But none of them were picked up. And number one, people speculate disguises, but I don't know if this is true, but weren't the cameras Israeli made?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. When I was in Dubai, I got a tour of the whole facility, and the cameras were German.
What facility?
There's an underground. They have this very sophisticated. Maybe we should put that.
Are you sure? I'd like to do that.
Okay, so I have to be serious. There's an underground facility that the government of Dubai has that completely created by Siemens, the big German company. It's like walking into an IMAX theater, but instead of one 5-story screen, it's 5 stories of TV monitors. So you have hundreds of TV monitors that cover every inch of Dubai. Every inch. So we're watching these. They gave us a tour. We're watching these, and we see a taxi driver looking at his phone while he's driving, and he crashes into a telephone pole. And they were like, oh, there's a taxi accident at the intersection, this and that. And the taxi driver's rattled, and he gets out of the cab, and he's trying to gain his, composure. And somebody runs up to him. We're watching all this on the screen. Somebody runs up to him, and then they call, I think it's 115 is their version of 911. And well, the ambulance is already away because we watched it happen in real time. So the operator's like, yes, the ambulance is on the way. The whole country's coming. Now, you can't do that in a country like the United States, but you can do it in other places. And then you can intercept what's happening in those other places.
Was that while you were in?
No, I was in the Center for Foreign Relations Committee then. And it's funny, I went to Dubai to talk about Hola. You know what Hola is?
Isn't that the money transfer
Money-
thing?
money-
You explain to people.
Yeah. So one of the ways that terrorist groups launder money is through something called Hola. And it's a time-tested, old school way to transfer money. And so what you do is you go in to see, Omar the tent maker. And you say to Omar, hey, listen, I want to transfer $50 to my friend Mahmoud in Cairo. And you give him $55. He sends an email to some guy in Cairo, and they generate a 16-digit number, and they'll say, Mahmoud's going to come in, and when he comes in, give him his $50. And then Omar the tent maker and Mahmoud split the $5 fee. So it's unprecedented, utterly unprecedented. And it happens every day all across the Middle East and parts of Africa. So I went to see the chief of police of Dubai, and I said, how do you follow what's happening here? And they follow. So just to test it, I set myself $50. I said, I want to send something to myself. I live in Washington, D.C. They said, okay, it'll be $55. Gave them the 55, they gave me a 16-digit number, and they told me to go to this Arabic bakery in Bethesda, Maryland. So I flew home a few days later. I take the subway up to Bethesda. I went in with my 16-digit number. Guy looks in his little ledger that he has, and he gives me my $50. No record, there's no trace of it. Completely anonymous. You don't have to show any ID or anything. So that's how they transfer drug money, that's how terrorist groups finance themselves. Just to test it. Fell to some guy in Cup.
Master your business with QuickBooks Online Advanced.
Fell to some guy in Cairo, and they generate a 16-digit number, and they'll say, Mahmoud's going to come in, and when he comes in, give him his $50. And then Omar the tent maker and Mahmoud split the $5 fee. So it's unprecedented, utterly unprecedented. And it happens every day all across the Middle East and parts of Africa. So I went to see the chief of police of Dubai, and I said, how do you follow what's happening here? And they follow. So just to test it, I set myself $50. I said, I want to send something to myself. I live in Washington, D.C. They said, okay, it'll be $55. Gave me the 55, they gave me a 16-digit number, and they told me to go to this Arabic bakery in Bethesda, Maryland. So I flew home a few days later. I take the subway up to Bethesda. I went in with my 16-digit number. The guy looks in his little ledger that he has, and he gives me my $50. No record, there's no trace of it. Completely anonymous. You don't have to show any ID or anything. So that's how they transfer drug money, that's how terrorist groups finance themselves. But the Dubaians have a beat on it.
So you were there to educate them on that.
No, I was there to ask them, how the heck do you do this?
Oh.
Yeah, they were like, well, there are a lot of threats that take place at the same time. Yeah, like we can beat you on the soles of your feet with a baseball bat, or you can give us copies of your ledger every day at the end of the workday. The Middle East.
Your choice.
Your choice, that's right.
So had the U.S. sorted out the Hola problem at this time? Because I would assume that terrorists were using it in the
Yeah,
U.S.
and they continue to use it. The U.S. koalas are easy enough to infiltrate. Any FBI agent can go to this Arabic bakery, and they probably already have gone to the Arabic bakery in Bethesda, Maryland, and said, look, we're going to fuck you up, or you're going to give us access to your books. The U.S. government is far more worried about cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why, doing my taxes, this most recent iteration, Quicken asked me 3 different times if I had bought or sold crypto. Like, why 3 times? It's because they're so worried about terrorist financing and money. Like, have you bought or sold crypto? Are you sure you haven't bought or sold crypto? Maybe you forgot. You want to think about it in a minute? Have you bought or sold crypto? I'm like, no, I don't have any crypto. But they're very worried about it.
Well, what I was going to ask is, because the way the blockchain, and I don't know much about it, but the way it's written, so to speak, they don't have any ins.
They don't. Legitimately, they do not have any ends. No. And that's why the likes of Coinbase just open their books to the government. Because they don't want to be implicated in terrorist financing and money laundering. Mm-hmm.
So, to come back to the Mossad, I told this for people that listen to I had a historian, Rick Spence. He's you know Rick Spence?
Yeah, sure.
So for people that heard me tell the story on that podcast, sorry about that, but I want to get John's take on it. You'll hear why. So this was a documentary that came out of Israel, so it was all on the up and up. And there was a Mossad officer that told a story about they had recruited an asset who, let's say he was like some sort of goat herder or something in, I think it was Syria. And so they recruit the guy, and eventually the Palestinians come to the guy, and they wanted to recruit him because he was in close proximity to the Israeli border.
Sure.
Again, I don't know if it was Syria, but whatever, let's just say there was. So the Palestinians come to him, and then he goes and tells the Mossad, and they're like, hey, I got approached by these guys. They want to know about some either border setup or movement of the IDF. And what the Mossad said is, okay, give them the information, because let's just assume what you can see, they can see. And it's all out there. Build a relationship, give them the information. Gives it to him. So then they come back to him and they say, okay, we want you to find a spot in the border wall for us to cross into Israel.
Oh.
So he goes to the Mossad and he tells them this, and they say, okay, let's go find a spot in the border wall together, and then when they come through, there'll be a warm welcome waiting for him. So they pick a spot, he goes and tells the Palestinians, and they say, okay, great, thanks. The night before the operation, they tell him, they say, oh yeah, by the way, as an insurance policy, you're coming with us.
Oh, shit.
So he tells them it's not this. And they said, well, if you say no, they'll get spooked, and you'll blow your cover or they'll kill you. So go with them, and when you cross the border, hit the deck, and we have ways to make sure that you don't get shot. And essentially that was all bullshit. And the way that the Mossad officer described it was sacrificing a pawn off the chessboard. And so I don't say that to illustrate the fact that, oh my God, the Mossad is so bad, like intelligence is a dirty game. I think we're all well aware of that. But the point, what I got from that is, why the hell would they be saying this? Number one, to speak to the ruthlessness of Mossad, sure. The mystique, I think that is beneficial to an intelligence agency.
But if you're a Palestinian,
That's what I'm saying. Why would you want to work with
why
any
would you
agency?
volunteer? Yeah.
Do they burn assets like that?
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. But I tell you, no other intelligence service would send a recruited asset to his death like that. That doesn't make any sense. But the Israelis are not like anybody else. They're not. It's just another Palestinian to them.
So what's an example operationally like that you could think of when you're like, the Israelis were different?
In almost everything that the Israelis do. When I was, the first time we were in Pierce Morgan, I debated a former director of the Mossad. And the guy just couldn't stop chuckling all through it was ridiculous. I said things like, the Israelis spy on the United States. Oh, no, not since Jonathan Pollard. And I said, well, Jonathan Pollard was caught in 1985, and you were spying on the United States in 1998. 2004. No comment. It's like, what is that? We would never, we're not permitted to spy on those roads. We're not permitted. The potential for blowback is outrageous. Can you imagine if we spied on the Israelis and got caught? Every member of Congress would be demanding the CIA director's head.
Do you think that we really don't spy on the
Yes.
Israelis?
That was their quote when I was there.
I was surprised to hear you say that in that interview because I figured it's this gentleman's game, so to speak.
With most other places, post 9/11, we developed the Five Eyes, and we don't spy on each other in the Five Eyes. The Five Eyes being U.S., UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We literally sit next to each other in each other's headquarters. I remember when George Tenet ordered us to open the files, he said. He meant literally open the files. And so we've had this Five Eyes relationship ever since. And of course, we have very, very close relationships with other countries. Not a ton, but a lot. But the Israelis are special. Yeah, we do not spy on the Israelis.
What about the Brits? Like, I don't know why. Do they have a reputation of being, I don't want to, not ruthless necessarily, but what was your experience with the Brits?
The Brits are very good at what they do. And one of the reasons why they're very good, well, there are several reasons. One, because they're everywhere, right? Most of these countries were colonies of the UK at one time or another. But they're also very good because they have only a fraction of the bureaucracy that we do. If we have an idea for an operation or for a covert action program, we have to go through 6 months and a dozen layers of permissions, lawyers from this office and lawyers from that office. The Brits want to do something. They just say, hey, we're going to do this, and then they go out and do it. I remember a boss of mine in counterterrorism just saying, I was on my way out to London, we were doing a joint operation, and he said, boy, I wish we were like the Brits. If they want to do something, a week later they're doing it. And I mentioned that to the Brits one time, and my counterpart said, yeah, but we wish we had your budget.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, you guys can never touch our budget. Nobody can.
This is completely unrelated, but I don't know why I thought of this. Didn't you do an op with Billy Wall?
Yeah. In the arts.
Can you say what that was?
I cannot, unfortunately. It was, we did two things. We were there to do some training classes, but we were there for a sensitive electronic kind of thing. But Billy was a bona fide American hero. Truly. A real hero.
Yeah, I mean, for people that aren't familiar, he was former, he was one of the Vietnam SF guys. He was a Green Beret, and then he served at the CIA for like 40 years or something.
Yeah, he was in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And to the best of my recollection, had 17 Purple Hearts. He had a personalized license plate that said 17 hits. And I said, Billy, that's a joke, right? And he said, no, it's not a joke. I got 17 Purple Hearts. I said, that has to be like Guinness Book of World Records kind of thing. And he says, he had a terrible, terrible, filthy mouth. And he's like, no, there's some sorry-ass son of a bitch from North Carolina got 18. But he used to tell stories too. Like, he told me this story once about being shot down behind North Korean lines. And he would forget that he had told me the story. And so he would tell it over and over and over. And then the final time that he told me the story, he was naked, first of all. Secondly, he came upon a cow in a pasture, and he slit the cow's artery and drank the blood for nourishment because he was starving. I go, that was in Apocalypse Now. That wasn't you. That was from Apocalypse Now. And he's like, it still makes for a good story. Oh, that's great. He was a good guy.
Was he, did he have Ground Branch back then, or was he just the contractor?
He was just a contractor. He was a contractor, and he was fearless. I mean, when I knew him, he was already well into his 70s. And, died in his 90s. Never had children. He was deeply in love with his wife, but she had died of cancer. So he was alone. And then 9/11 hit. And what else is there to live for? He's got no kids. Bought a house in, it was like, Friendly Town, or Sunshine-ville, or it had some stupid made-up name in Florida. I can't remember the name of it. And he had a niece who lived in Las Vegas, and she wrote his autobiography. And I was glad somebody did, because his stories, whether or not they were a little embellished, his stories are an important part of modern American history. And there really needed to be a written record of that. Yeah. Niceville.
Niceville.
That's
something
it.
American.
Yeah. Niceville, Florida.
Were you at the agency when they stood up the GRS program?
No, I had already gone. But I was dating a woman at the time whose soon-to-be ex-husband was in GRS. And she said my husband's a GRS officer. I said, what's GRS? She looked at me kind of funny and she told me, and I said, oh shit, we've made it official.
So what was it before they made it official?
It was just like, hey, you doing anything for the next week? We're gonna need for you to do this thing. Don't tell anybody. Yeah, now it's an office.
But wasn't it stood up to be like security for case officers?
Security for leaders more than case. Well, no, that's not true. Security for case officers, yes, especially as it related to operating in the green zone in Baghdad. That's where most of them were doing their work. Because the green zone was easily infiltrated. Yeah, moving from point A to point B, you took your life in your hands every time. Those guys, I mean, you have to be a brave son of a gun to do a job like that. I mean, you could say about a lot of different agency jobs, oh, that job's not for everybody. That job, you really have to be fearless. You really do. Because your job is literally to throw your body in front of the other guy so the other guy doesn't get killed and can complete the meeting. Yeah, thankless.
I can't remember who it was. It was somebody who was in GRS was talking about Yemen and how Yemen was like a spycraft playground.
Oh my God. I've been to Yemen 5 times.
In your prior life? In what context?
Each time was for a different thing. The first time I went, it was kind of funny. The first time I went, there were 2 Yemens, right? There was the Republic of Yemen, North Yemen, and then the People's Democratic Republic of Yemen, which was a Soviet satellite state. And things were looking really good the first time I went. The 2 Yemens were in the process of merging, becoming one unified Yemen. People were literally dancing in the streets. I went that first time from Jeddah. I was in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and 2 friends of mine were stationed in Sana'a, and so they said, hey, the Prophet's birthday is Monday, so it's a 3-day weekend, you want to come down to Yemen, we'll hang out. I said, yeah, I'd never been to Yemen. So I just flew down. We had a good time. Second time I went, this one unified Yemen thing, it's not working out the way they thought it was. And so, there weren't really any benefits, and the North Yemenis were trying to dominate the South Yemenis, and it just wasn't good. The third time I went, they're launching Scud missiles at each other, right? And then it was the first Civil War, and then the North defeated the South. And then the vice president, Ali Al-Bid, he was a South Yemeni, he fled fled to Oman to save himself. But the fourth time I went, it was grim, where it wasn't safe to stay anywhere except the Marriott, which had 30-foot blast walls all around it. The last time I went, I was with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and we were just getting ready to close the embassy and evacuate everybody. So I go there, I'm staying at the Marriott, and security is crazy heavy. It's actually kind of funny. I alluded to this in a Senate report that I wrote, but I had never seen security like this anywhere. And there are these guys right outside the lobby of the hotel, and they've got machine guns, like obviously like, you know, Mac 9s, Mac 10s, and they're speaking English, American English. And I said to the doorman, I said, man, who's here? And he goes, VVIP, like that. I said, VVIP who? Mrs. Clinton? He goes, no, it's a man. I said, is it Mr. Cheney? Or no, it wasn't Cheney, it was Biden, was vice president at the time. Biden? And he says, no. I said, who is it? He said, I don't know. So then I hear, the package is moving, So I'm just standing there. And then here comes the VVIP, and he looks at me and he goes, hello, John. And I said, hello, Steve. Kappas, the deputy director of the CIA. And he gets in his limo, and I go, what, no ride for me? And he drives away, like a 6-car convoy. I had to wait for my, one poorly armored 10-year-old Volkswagen to come pick me up. It was so rude. Anyway, I was on the CIA shit list by then. So, the reason why it was so bad, just a couple of days before I arrived, about a week before I arrived, a group of 6 South Korean diplomats had arrived to talk to the Yemeni government about a development project. And on the road from the airport to the hotel, they were ambushed by Al-Qaeda and they were all assassinated. And so a few days after that, the South Korean government sent a group of South Korean intelligence officers to investigate the terrorist attack. And they were ambushed on the road to the hotel and they were all assassinated. The Koreans just shut the embassy down and evacuated everybody. It's grim. It really is. And there's no hope in sight.
Yeah, I remember hearing about, there was obviously a lot of terror going on in Yemen, but wasn't there, I want to say it was I think it was the Saudi intelligence head that almost got killed by the guy with the bomb up his ass?
Yeah, that was Prince Mohammed bin Nayef.
But wasn't that directed by the American guy in Yemen, Al-Awlaki, or whatever the hell his name was?
That was the rumor. I never believed that to be the case because Awlaki was more of a propagandist than he wasn't operational in any way. I met him. Yeah, in fact, I was the only CIA officer. Well, here's what happened. I'm in Arabic training in 1993 in the CIA language school. And the instructor says, we're going to go out on a field trip today. We're going to go to Falls Church, Virginia. And that's where all the Arabs live. So we're going to go to the Quran store. There's a store in the strip mall in Falls Church that just sells Qurans. And apparently they do perfectly fine for themselves. So we're going to go to the Quran store. Then we're going to go to the Arabic grocery store. And then we're going to go to the shish kebab restaurant. But you can't speak English. And then after lunch, we're gonna go to the mosque. There's a gigantic mosque on Route 7 in Falls Church. We're gonna go to the mosque and we're gonna talk about Islam, that you can't speak English. We're like, cool. And we had done this a couple times, went to the zoo to learn the names of the animals in English, and then we did all kinds of field trip. So we go do this thing and we learn the word for, fava beans, and we learn the word for newspaper. We're trying to talk to the shopkeepers, we order lunch in Arabic, and then we go to the mosque. Well, Anwar al-Awlaki was the imam of the mosque. And 8 years later, that's where the 9/11 hijackers prayed the night before 9/11. Anwar al-Awlaki was born in New Mexico. He was Yemeni. His father was the Yemeni ambassador to the United States, who went back to Yemen to become the Minister of Agriculture. Solidly pro-American. Anwar was born in New Mexico, raised as an American, spoke English without any kind of accent. Just spoke English like you and I speak English, but self-radicalized during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, and then joined Al-Qaeda before 9/11 in like 98 or 99. So after 9/11, I mentioned offhandedly one day, oh, Al-Awlaki, I met him. People were like, what? I said, yeah. In my Arabic class, we went to the mosque, and he gave us a tour of the mosque, and we had a Q&A, and then he gave us tea, and next thing I know, security's down. Like, you need to go this from the beginning, because everybody else had left the agency by then. All the other students had moved on to other careers, and the instructor had retired. I was the only one left who had actually met Al-Awlaki. I'm like, guys, it was one afternoon. I don't know what I can tell you that's going to be of any operational value. But then I did go to Yemen, and funny thing, I had this relationship with the FBI, right? So I go to Yemen, and nobody in the CIA would speak to me. I was with the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. So I go to see the FBI at the legal attaché. So I walk in, and I knock on the door, and I said, hey. And the guy says, John Kiriaki, born August 9th, 1964, Sharon, Pennsylvania. Graduated from Newcastle High School, Newcastle, Pennsylvania. Bachelor's degree in Middle Eastern Studies, Master's in Legislative Affairs from George Washington University. I go, very funny. Very funny. He says, you're going to do me a favor. And I said, really? What favor's that? He said, you're going to go back to your congressional committee and you're going to get me funding for 2 more slots out here. And I said, really? What's in it for me? He says, I'll give you a classified briefing. I said, okay, I'll take that deal. So I did get slots for 2 more FBI agents. But in the course of that conversation, I said, so what do? Sit here and play with your balls, or you go out looking for Anwar al-Awlaki? And he said, Al-Awlaki. I know when Al-Awlaki blows a fart, he says. He said, I know Al-Awlaki's location to within 3 feet, 24 hours a day.
So ready then.
And I said, why don't you take him out? He said, well, that's the other side of the question. And then, sure enough, a couple months later, they blow him to 1,000 pieces.
What was the classified briefing on?
Al-Awlaki.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, actually, speaking of like the Saudis, we didn't cover this last time, but didn't Abu Zubaydah's diary have the names and phone numbers of?
That's the other side of the whole John. And then, sure enough, a couple months later, they blow him to 1,000 pieces.
What was the classified briefing on?
Al-Awlaki.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, actually, speaking of like the Saudis, we didn't cover this last time, but didn't Abu Zubaydah's diary have the names and phone numbers of 3 of them?
3 princes.
But didn't something weird happen to them?
We went to the Saudis and we said, look, there.
I don't know, well, actually, speaking of the Saudis, we didn't cover this last time, but didn't Abu Zubaydah's diary have the names and phone numbers of 3 of them?
3 princes.
But didn't something weird happen to them?
We went to the Saudis and we said, look, there are 3 princes in Abu Zubaydah's address book with their personal cell phone numbers. You need to take care of this, or we're going to take care of it. And you're not going to like the way we do it. Next thing you know, like magic, one of them dies on the operating table while getting bariatric bypass surgery. One is killed in a 1-car accident on the Riyadh to Jeddah highway. And one of them goes camping in the desert and dies of thirst. Mm-hmm. And then they said, listen, we wanted to help you out with those 3 princes, but they don't exist anymore.
So are the Saudis friends?
In that context, I would